Welcome to the surviving entries of the Allied operative reports, recovered from the Tunisian sector dated between February and April 1943. These are fragments written under the Office of Strategic Services and the British Special Operations Executive, filed originally as confidential desert intelligence intercepts. The pages were found incomplete, typed on thin government paper, bearing the standard field heading North African Theater of Operations Restricted. What follows is read as preserved. Spelling, syntax, and phrasing remain unaltered. We are to cross the southern ridges in disguise. Orders received through cipher number 40 instruct us to assume local attire and proceed without insignia. Identity papers destroyed. Radios to remain silent except in case of immediate extraction. Code word for return, Mirage. This is the first dated mention of what later reports would label Operation Mirage, a coordinated intelligence effort by Allied forces to infiltrate Axis-controlled territory through cultural assimilation and covert reconnaissance. The document's author signs only as TMR, possibly Lieutenant Thomas M. Reeve, attached to the 8th Army Intelligence Detachment. His entries describe the early preparations for field disguise and communication discipline during the North African campaign. Supplies reduced to essentials. Camel packs restitched with concealed compartments for transmitter components. Clothing issued by Cairo Depot resembles Bedouin garments, though dye uneven. Arabic phrases memorized phonetically. Fear less of discovery than of mispronunciation. The tone of these entries is procedural, not literary. Each sentence functions as a record of method, the vocabulary of adaptation under military constraint. The author reports conditions rather than emotions, revealing the operational logic behind a war fought in silence and disguise. Sunset, 1830 hours. Group of 6 departed from Qasar Gilane. Visibility poor wind from east. Objective intercept Axis convoy, scheduled along Gabes track. Local guide Amir present. No acknowledgement from command since 0700 hours. Proceeding regardless. This opening record demonstrates the practical reality of clandestine warfare in the North African theater. Intelligence files confirm that wireless interference across the desert rendered communication unreliable, forcing units to rely on predetermined rendezvous codes and acoustic signaling. The term acoustic relay, later standardized, appears here as field improvisation, an operative practice evolving in real time. During movement, we encountered 3 Axis scouts. Engagement avoided by presenting ourselves as salt traders. Conversation brief. They questioned destination. Amir responded in local dialect. No challenge issued. Enemy morale appears uncertain. They distrust the terrain. The entry ends with a routine notation, weather clear, morale stable. It resumes 2 pages later with a line that has since become emblematic among historians of Allied deception tactics. To survive here, we must become what the enemy expects to see. No comment accompanies the statement. It stands as a factual observation inside an intelligence logbook. Subsequent pages reveal the progression from adaptation to infiltration. Night operations require full silence. Camel bells removed. Cloth wrapped around hooves to muffle sound. Water ration 0.7 liter per man per 24 hours. Heat by day exceeds 110 degrees. 1 man name withheld showing signs of dehydration. Treatment postponed until objective reached. Each segment continues in the same unemotional syntax. Temperature readings, material lists, and coded references to geographic coordinates replace any narrative flow. These are not diaries for posterity. They are immediate tools for survival. The document's rhythm mirrors the measured precision of a field report, clipped, mechanical, deliberately detached. At 400 hours, the operative records the first physical contact with German logistics personnel. Intercepted convoy at point 27A. 4 trucks, 2 motorbikes, no escort armored. We observed at 200 meters distance. Decision made to signal Allied air unit by flare code. However, wind carried dust obscuring color. Signal misread. Air unit attacked wrong sector. The mistake cost at least 2 Allied trucks in an adjacent valley, an incident confirmed by the air operations log of March 2, 1943. The operative's next notation remains free of self-reproach, documenting only sequence. Retreated southward after contact. Axis patrol advanced briefly, then withdrew. Amir reports rumors spreading through villages of European soldiers dressed as locals. Morale among tribes mixed curiosity and fear in equal measure. The combination of first-hand detail and detached observation gives this record its distinctive texture. It neither justifies nor condemns. It lists. Within those lists, the mechanics of disguise, a concept both tactical and ethical, unfold as empirical data. Clothing durability acceptable. Sand abrasion damages radio casing. One transmission sent at 23:15 hours, partial success. Received instruction, continue infiltration north. Objective remains confirmation of Axis supply node near Marath. By the 5th page of the surviving set, the handwriting changes. Scholars suggest this indicates transcription from field notes to official report form. The typewriter ribbon fades halfway through the next paragraph, leaving faint impressions of words that were later enhanced during archival restoration. Contact made with local informant, Nadir. Payment in silver coinage. Information indicates supply node disguised as date storage facility west of Gabes. Verification pending. Risk of exposure increasing. Recommend withdrawal within 48 hours. The paragraph ends without a signature. A small ink mark, possibly a fingerprint, smudges the corner. Below it, a single additional line appears, written in a different hand, likely by a commanding officer. Report acknowledged. Maintain cover. Do not return until instructed. This sequence closes the first recovered notebook. Subsequent pages are missing. What remains introduces the central paradox of Operation Mirage, a mission that demanded visibility and invisibility in the same instant. The agents were to move among local populations as indistinguishable figures while transmitting intelligence that shaped the Allied advance. Their existence depended upon erasure. The final notation in this opening segment reads, March 4, 1943. Dawn. No movement detected on horizon. Axis aircraft overhead low altitude. Maintaining disguise. Awaiting further orders. The desert remains impartial. From this last phrase emerges the defining tone of the entire archive: impartiality, not as moral distance, but as environmental fact. The desert records without witness. Every entry echoes the same restraint, the same refusal of embellishment. No adjectives of triumph or loss appear. Only coordinates, measurements, and acknowledgments of transmission. Thus concludes the initial file of the Allied Operatives record, recovered under classification reference NA/1943, Op Mirage 27B. The handwriting ends where the horizon begins. There are no additional remarks, no farewell, no retrospective explanation. What survives is the rhythm of duty rendered in notation, a voice measured against wind and silence, the only constants in the desert war. The following context establishes the origin, authorship, and archival path of the document commonly referred to as Operation Mirage North African Field Notes, 1943. The material attributed to this designation originates from multiple field reports, memoranda, and handwritten journals maintained by Allied intelligence personnel operating in the Tunisian and Libyan sectors during the final phase of the North African campaign. The earliest dated page bears February 14, 1943, while the latest entry is marked March 30th of the same year. Together, they form an incomplete but coherent operational record concerning the deployment of disguised reconnaissance agents under joint British and American command. Authorship is primarily credited to Lieutenant Thomas M. Reeve of the British 8th Army Intelligence Section, attached temporarily to the Allied Operational Subunit D, later known as the Special Operations Executive Field Branch. Cross-reference with the War Office Personnel Index, WO 3247, confirms the existence of an officer by that name, enlisted in London in 1939, promoted to lieutenant in 1942, and declared missing in action April 1943. His personnel card lists linguistic proficiency, Arabic Limited, and field assignment reconnaissance liaison. These qualifications correspond with the language and subject of the recovered notebooks. Geographically, the writings correspond to a region between the Marath Line and the southern approaches to Gabes, Tunisia. The coordinates mentioned in the reports, Ndagwan 9°C, 33°9°E, align with known Allied operational zones during that period. Supporting confirmation arises from the 8th Army's General Orders No. 243 dated March 1, 1943, which mention intelligence detachments conducting field observation under unconventional cover. No names are attached to this description, but the phrasing parallels Reeves' own wording within the first notebook, Infiltration Through Disguise. The surviving documents exist in three physical forms. The first is a bound field notebook labeled number 27B containing handwritten notes in indelible pencil on military issue paper stock dimensions, 15 by 10 centimeters. The second is a carbon copy typescript of roughly 42 pages prepared in 1944 for internal circulation within the British War Office's Intelligence Analysis Department. The third is a microfilmed copy held by the Imperial War Museum under accession code IWM NA 1943-27B, Film 1. The microfilm was produced in 1958 when the War Office undertook systematic preservation of deteriorating field documents from the North African theater. All citations in this transcript refer to the microfilmed version unless otherwise noted. Provenance of the original notebooks can be traced to their rediscovery in 1979 by a civilian archivist named Harold B. Langford, who was cataloging unclassified remnants of the 8th Army's intelligence files stored at the Ministry of Defense Annex in Hayes, Middlesex. Langford's logbook MOD accession register, number 4732, records 2 notebooks unlisted concerning field observation under disguise. They were transferred to the Imperial War Museum in 1981, catalogued in 1982, and first cited publicly in the 1983 monograph, Desert Operations, The Intelligence Dimension, by historian Margaret C. Ellison. Ellison's treatment was descriptive, but not interpretive. She transcribed roughly 1/3 of the surviving pages. The physical condition of the notebook indicates long exposure to heat and sand abrasion. The original binding has disintegrated, and individual leaves show signs of folding and repair with adhesive tape of wartime manufacture. Graphite text remains legible, though certain numerical entries have faded beyond recovery. A 1996 restoration report by the museum's conservation unit notes traces of adhesive residue from a detached envelope, implying the presence of supplementary material now missing. No additional correspondence or photographs were found alongside the journal. Language analysis conducted by the museum's archivists identifies consistent British military terminology, coupled with occasional American spelling conventions likely introduced during post-war transcription. The microfilm's typewritten version omits several shorthand phrases present in the original, suggesting editorial standardization. Marginal annotations in blue ink added by an unknown reviewer appear on several pages. One such annotation reads, "Verify authenticity with SOE Dispatch, number 14 Cairo." This note confirms post-war cross-checking against the Special Operations Executive's Cairo Correspondence Archive, though no conclusive authorship validation was ever issued. The broader operational background situates the writings within the Allied effort to dismantle Axis logistics in North Africa, preceding the Battle of the Mareth Line, March 16–31, 1943. Intelligence at the time indicated that German and Italian forces under Field Marshal Erwin Rommel were preparing to consolidate defensive positions following their withdrawal from Libya. Allied command sought to disrupt these efforts through reconnaissance, misinformation, and psychological operations. Among these measures was the deployment of undercover personnel, linguists, regional intermediaries, and trained operatives tasked with gathering intelligence while posing as civilians or traitors. These missions operated outside conventional military channels and often without written orders to preserve deniability. Operation Mirage represents one documented instance of this approach. The documents reveal that Lieutenant Reeves' detachment functioned under Cairo's Section D, an experimental intelligence wing tasked with irregular field observation. Section D reports from January 1943 describe the necessity of infiltration via cultural disguise utilizing linguistic camouflage and exchange with cooperative tribes. The surviving notebook appears to correspond directly to these directives. In particular, the phrase linguistic camouflage reoccurs in both the Cairo Memorandum and Reeves' text confirming operational linkage. At the time of writing, Tunisia remained under partial Axis control, with German forces occupying the northern coast and Allied troops advancing from both west and south. Environmental conditions posed continuous difficulty. Meteorological Office records for February 1943 report temperatures ranging between 43 degrees by day and 5 degrees at night, accompanied by periodic sandstorms reducing visibility below 200 meters. The combination of terrain heat and logistical strain rendered ordinary reconnaissance ineffective, thus prompting adoption of the disguise method described in the field journal. The archival chain also includes one supplementary memorandum, found among the same batch, authored by an unidentified officer under the heading Report on Disguise Operations. The memorandum, typed on British Army letterhead and dated April 7, 1943, refers explicitly to Lieutenant Reeves' detachment status, uncertain, last transmission, March 4th, presumed lost near Gabez. This corresponds precisely to the final entry of Notebook 27B, which ends on March 4th. The memorandum further notes that intel from local informants confirmed sabotage of Axis convoy near Mareth, thereby connecting the contents of the journal with verified operational outcomes. After the war, the documents were transferred to British archives under the 1946 Intelligence Material Transfer Act, grouping them with broader unorthodox warfare files. They remained classified until 1978, when the 30-year rule required declassification review. Portions were released to the public while pages containing names of native collaborators were redacted. Those redactions remain in the microfilm version currently accessible. The Imperial War Museum provides controlled digital access for research purposes, but restricts reproduction of certain pages under data protection provisions relating to personal identification. Translation of Arabic terms within the document follows the standardized transliteration system adopted by the museum's Department of Middle Eastern Collections. Proper nouns referring to individuals such as Amir and Nadir are retained as transliterated, though their historical identities remain unverified. The translation process, completed in 2001 under the supervision of archivist Leila H. Atassi, aimed for semantic fidelity rather than stylistic adaptation. The English text presented here reflects that scholarly translation without interpretive modification. In academic literature, the Operation Mirage notebook has been cited sparingly. The most detailed analysis appears in Silent Front's Intelligence and Identity in the Desert War. Oxford University Press, 2007, which situates the document within broader Allied strategies of misinformation. That study concludes that the notebook represents a hybrid form of military ethnography, neither pure intelligence log nor personal diary, but an operational record of adaptation under extreme constraint. Other historians, notably Peter R. Macmillan, in Agents Without Flags, 2015, have questioned the notebook's completeness, suggesting that it may have been partially reconstructed from debriefing summaries rather than solely from field notes. Nonetheless, the museum's forensic assessment in 2018 confirmed the authenticity of the paper stock and ink composition as consistent with wartime materials issued by the British Army between 1942 and 1943. The contextual evidence therefore establishes the record as a genuine contemporary document, produced under operational conditions, preserved through official archival channels and authenticated by subsequent material analysis. Its existence contributes a unique primary perspective on Allied intelligence practices in North Africa, specifically the tactical integration of disguise and local interaction as extensions of reconnaissance. As a source, the document stands midway between secrecy and disclosure, created under orders forbidding identification, yet preserved by bureaucratic procedure that ensured eventual recovery. The neutrality of its tone and the absence of self-commentary support its classification as an intelligence field record rather than a personal memoir. Each page serves as evidence of how information was produced, transmitted, and recorded within a theater where communication itself was a form of camouflage. Thus, the stage for this archival narrative is defined an anonymous terrain, an unacknowledged officer, and a set of surviving pages that speak only in operational syntax. The next segment, drawn directly from the early record, presents the first intact transcription of those entries, offering without alteration the words as they were written under the pressure of dust heat and imminent uncertainty in the spring of 1943. The earliest preserved section of the Operation Mirage notebook begins on a loose sheet bearing the field notation Entry Number 1, February 14th, 1943, Southern Tunisia. The handwriting remains steady and legible despite discoloration of the paper edges. No formal salutation appears. The author identifies himself by rank and initials only. Lieutenant T. M. Reeve, 8th Army Intelligence Section, stationed near Qasar Galan. Orders received through Cairo Command initiate field observation by infiltration. Objective confirm enemy logistics movement between Mareth and Gabez. Method non-uniformed passage. Communication restricted to cipher 40B. Duration unspecified. The entry continues in unbroken sequence, alternating between operational notation and brief personal observation. Temperature 104 GF by 1300 hours. Visibility obscured by wind. Supplies, water, 8 gallons, rations for 4 days. 2 camels, 1 local guide. Amir bin Hassan tribe unspecified. Wireless apparatus concealed in saddle pouch. Transmission range uncertain. At the top margin appears a separate remark written in smaller script. We have entered a zone where distance and direction fail to agree. This remark underlined once is one of few sentences departing from procedural language. The next passage resumes in formal tone. Departure, 1700 hours. Route selected to avoid known Axis patrol sectors recorded in Intelligence Map Sheet C3. Travel by twilight. Arab attire issued from Cairo Depot, acceptable though coarse. Skin darkening compound applied. Odor persistent. The following paragraph dated February 15th reads, encountered first local settlement at 0630 hours. Contact made with village elder identified as Salem. Exchange conducted through interpreter. Offered salt, received information. Axis trucks move north every second day, escorted by motorbikes. No air cover observed. The author records every exchange in telegraphic syntax. Each sentence serves as factual note. None exceed a single line. The field entries continue through February 16th. Radio test, 2100 hours, result partial. Signal interference, heavy, possibly atmospheric. Message transmitted, advancing west, 9 miles, no contact. Awaiting acknowledgement. A blank space follows, then a short annotation in parentheses. No response as of dawn. A line across the page separates the next day's observations. February 17th. Axis patrol sighted 500 yards east. 6 men, 2 vehicles. Concealment successful. Used camels to mask position. No incident. Guide Amir reports enemy supply route altered after previous ambush near Mareth. Intelligence requires update. The entries display no overt expression of emotion. The few descriptive sentences convey sensory data. Wind carries fine sand. Eyes inflamed. Water ration reduced. Camels rest poorly. The desert transmits sound differently, distance deceptive. This last line has been cited in later analyses as the earliest implicit acknowledgement of environmental distortion affecting operational accuracy. It remains without commentary in the notebook. On the following page appears a notation resembling a communication log. Cipher 40B, Message 3, Time 22, 47 HRs, to Cairo Command from Unit 7. Reporting continued observation of Axis transport line. Estimated convoy size 4 to 6 vehicles. Direction NW. Weather clear. Local cooperation adequate. End transmission. Below the typed code line, the author adds a pencil remark. Transmission delayed by sand interference. The record then proceeds into what seems a continuous 48-hour movement. Each note includes the hour coordinates and brief summary. Feb 18, 0500 HRs. Crossed Wadi dry bed. No tracks except animal. Feb 18, 2030 HRs. Light on horizon, believed Axis encampment. Observation only. Feb 19, 0745 Rs. Enemy trucks sighted at 300 yards. Counted 5. 1 carrying barrels, likely fuel. At this point, the author includes a rare introspective phrase. The disguise remains functional, though conscience does not adapt as readily. This statement stands alone between 2 factual entries. The next lines revert to operational form. Approached convoy from South Ridge. Maintained distance. Recorded direction of travel NW. Contact avoided. Axis movement corresponds to prior intelligence. Fuel drums unmarked. No pursuit. Each page concludes with a short logistics summary written in a consistent format. Weather, fare, rations, adequate or morale, maintained. The same triad repeats through subsequent pages, forming an internal rhythm, typical of official field journals. The sequence, dated February 20th, contains the first mention of Allied aircraft support. Observed Allied reconnaissance plane at high altitude 10-15 hours. No signal exchange. Aircraft circled once departed north. Axis units displayed no reaction. Impression they no longer look upward. On the reverse side appears the day's final sentence underscored lightly. Silence is the safest uniform. The February 21st entry covers an attempted transmission failure and notes the group's dwindling resources. Radio battery low. Attempted recharge via improvised hand generator. Partial success. Communication resumed 20 hours. No acknowledgement. Axis interference probable. Food supply 2 days remaining. Decision proceed to GABA's perimeter under continued disguise. Several pencil marks suggest later editing or emphasis possibly by the author during transcription. The next page, dated February 22nd, reads, Reached settlement identified as Al-Raqib. Gained entry without challenge. Observed mixed presence civilians and Italian engineers. Heard discussion concerning fuel shortage. One mention of Allied raid near Mareth. No confirmation. We listened only. The style remains terse, free from interpretation. Subsequent observations detail logistics and local interaction. Amir negotiated purchase of grain, payment in silver. Traders suspicious but compliant. No hostility detected. Axis presence minimal. Departure before dawn advised. The entry concludes with a note on temperature and visibility. Heat increasing. Horizon indistinct. Travel by night henceforth. The page following carries only 2 lines. February 23rd, south of Gabes. Encountered Axis messenger on horseback. Uniform incomplete. Allowed passage. Exchanged greeting. He did not look back. This event appears again in later intelligence summaries as confirmation of unrestricted Axis communication along the corridor, then under observation. The operative's description continues. We moved west at 1930 hours. Stars obscured. Used compass. Needle erratic. Guide attributes error to magnetic stone in sand. Possible. Progress slow. The document preserves this mixture of empirical record and incidental local explanation without qualification. There follows a brief entry, February 24th, Tro 400 H Chars, halted for rest. No pursuit detected. Axis radio chatter faintly audible through interference. Words indistinct except Mareth and fuel. Recorded frequency 6.95 MHz. A margin note in smaller writing adds, no further decoding attempted. Equipment fragile. By February 25th, tone and cadence remain consistent with increasing logistical detail. Rations reduced to half. Second camel unfit for travel, released. Weight of transmitter causing strain. Suggest redesign for portability if future missions authorized. The practicality of such notes reveals an ongoing awareness of administrative procedure, even within hostile territory. Reeve continues. At 1600 hours, we reached Ridge 27C. Observation point established. Axis vehicles visible on coastal route at distance approx. 5 km. Number on 8 trucks, 2 motorbikes. Direction, north. Recorded on chart. Following this, a sentence marked by faint pencil pressure. Night brings clarity impossible by day. Then resumption of factual style. Commenced mapping of convoy path. Attempted to signal Allied aircraft using prearranged flare code. Dust interference. No acknowledgement. The entries from February 26th and 27th show growing brevity. Sandstorm. Visibility nil. All movement suspended. Radio silent. Battery dead. Enemy movement unverified. A single longer note appears below these fragments. During storm, we remained sheltered under canvas. Amir recited verses to mark passage of hours. I recorded sound of wind to estimate velocity. Result, approx. 40 mm sustained. Instruments unreliable. After this, handwriting becomes less uniform, possibly due to exhaustion. The next full date recorded is February 28th. Weather cleared. Located remnant of Italian outpost abandoned. Collected 2 maps, burned refuse, and a single photograph showing convoy at Gabes Depot. Photograph now stored with other papers. This image, presumed to have accompanied the original notebook, was not among materials recovered in 1979. The description remains the only reference to it. The closing lines of this early record mark the end of the first operational phase. March 1st, returning southward to designated checkpoint. Axis patrols increased. Disguise maintained. Amir advises alternate path through low dunes. Will comply. The entry concludes without signature, followed by a short, undated remark written in cramped handwriting across the bottom margin. If message reaches command objective confirmed. Fuel convoys active. We proceed in silence. No further explanation accompanies this notation. Its placement suggests an addition written at the time of withdrawal. From this point onward, pages relating to early observation and abruptly resuming later, with a new sequence now catalogued as the Rising Incidents section. The tone remains factual throughout, consistent with the author's adherence to military reporting form. Every statement is confined to verifiable observation. None offers reflection beyond the boundaries of record. Thus, the early record preserves not emotion, but evidence, dates, coordinates, conditions, and the disciplined syntax of an intelligence officer operating under orders in the North African desert of 1943. The section that follows is drawn from supplementary documents, produced concurrently with or subsequent to the entries of Lieutenant T.M. Reeves' notebook. These parallel accounts, some official, others personal, address the same operational period between February 20th and March 4th, 1943. Each was created independently and later filed under separate administrative headings. Their convergence reveals discrepancies in observation sequence and interpretation. The materials are presented without analytical comment. The first relevant comparison appears in the Field Intelligence Summary No. 16, issued by the 8th Army Headquarters on March 7, 1943. The summary cites an infiltration party under Cairo directive without naming the unit or officer. It reports contact with local tribes established south of Gabes during latter half of February. Intelligence gathered indicates Axis convoys proceeding with reduced escort. No hostile engagement reported. Operation considered successful within limited scope. This version suggests a complete mission cycle and safe withdrawal, in contrast with the absence of any closing entry in the notebook. The summary's brevity and finality stand against the field record's unresolved tone. A second source, a typed memorandum dated March 10, 1943, from the British Middle East Command File, AMA 243-43, expands the description. The party dispatched from Qasr Galan is presumed intact as of 2nd March. Wireless communication lost after 4th March 0230 ASHR's subsequent air reconnaissance failed to identify signal flares in designated retrieval zone. Probability sandstorm interference or capture. Verification pending. Here, the operative group is described as presumed intact, yet communication is noted as severed. The dual assertion of continuity and disappearance encapsulates the uncertainty prevailing in contemporary headquarters communications. Another document, a brief entry within the operations log of the 4th Light Armored Brigade PRO WO 169-4824, introduces a contradictory perspective. March 5, 1943. Report received from local Arab messenger claiming 3 British officers and 2 natives seized by German patrol near Mareth. Messenger's reliability untested. Details inconsistent. The same day, however, the German Panzerarmee Africa Diary captured microfilm T3130 includes an unrelated but potentially overlapping note. A group of suspected traitors intercepted near Matmata later released. No identification. Items carried rugs, tools, grain. Behavior not hostile. Possible smugglers. The coincidence of date and region allows the possibility that both entries describe the same encounter from opposing viewpoints, each incomplete. Allied command labeled the messenger's account unverified. German staff dismissed the group as smugglers. The original notebook records on February 23rd an encounter with Axis messenger on horseback, but no detention. Whether these accounts intersect remains unresolved. Further inconsistency arises in an American report preserved in the United States National Archives. 6 Entry 190, Box 41, Folder 6, North Africa, MSC, reports. The report compiled by OSS Officer Major R. E. Langley is dated March 12, 1943. British intelligence detachment operating under native cover failed to report after 1st March. Intercepted German wireless of 3 March references capture of enemy agents south of Gabes, 2 described as speaking poor Arabic. No confirmation through British channels. The specific mention of poor Arabic contradicts Reeves' recorded statement of adequate communication through Guide Amir. It may reflect post-interrogation propaganda or confusion in translation. German transcripts of intercepted communications for early March 1943 have not survived in full. An additional personal letter provides still another variant, dated April 4, 1943, addressed to Mrs. Helen Reeve and preserved in the family papers, private collection, deposited 1992. The letter originates from Captain L. J. Moncrief, 8th Army Intelligence Liaison. The text reads, "It may comfort you to know that your husband's mission achieved its purpose. The information concerning Axis fuel convoys reached us in time to act. The operation was dangerous and carried out under difficult conditions, but his contribution was decisive. There is at present no definite word of his return. The assertion that the information reached us in time to act implies transmission success, whereas the official communication logs list no confirmed messages after February 25th. The contrast between administrative silence and private assurance typifies wartime correspondence practices, but complicates historical reconstruction. A French source. The Rapport du Détachement Français. Libre de Xar Guilan Archives. Nationales Astu, Outre. Meyerbaum. Introduce yet another variant. Nous avons vu passer vers le 27 février un petit groupe d'hommes vêtus en arabe. Leur accent n'était pas local. Ils dirent venir de Tripolitaine. L'un d'eux parla français et demanda si la route vers Gabès était sûre. Nous avons indiqué le chemin. Plus tard, nous avons appris qu'ils étaient des agents anglais. Translation. We saw around 27th of February a small group of men dressed as Arabs. Their accent was not local. They said they came from Tripolitania. One spoke French and asked whether the road to Gabès was safe. We directed them. Later we learned they were English agents. This observation, neutral in tone, corroborates the disguise, but contradicts the notebook's description of movement in the opposite direction, southward rather than northward. Such directional divergence may result from misdating or parallel missions, yet it remains one of the record's unresolved inconsistencies. Axis documentation yields a further piece of conflicting evidence. The Kriegstagebuch der 19. Leichte Afrika Division, German War Diary, March 1943, Bundesarchiv, RH 2797, notes on March 2nd. Rumors among troops of British agents using local disguise continue. Patrols instructed to verify identity of all traitors. One such group observed near Mareth. Inspection conducted, found harmless. Officer in charge reports no further incident. The matter-of-fact tone mirrors that of Reeves' own entries. Yet on March 3rd, the same diary lists a follow-up. Unconfirmed, 2 Englishmen captured near Gabès. Intelligence section doubts authenticity. Story likely invented by Arabs seeking reward. The transition from skepticism to rumor underscores the difficulty, say, of separating event from speculation within military record systems operating under stress. Another Allied intelligence cable introduces a quantitative contradiction. The signal log Cairo command file CC40B includes at 23:15 hours March 1st the entry, received weak transmission keywords convoy and fuel. Identity uncertain. Source may be Unit 7 or unrelated signal, filed for verification. If this fragment originated from Reeves' group, it would extend their operational activity beyond the last notebook entry. However, frequency discrepancies make positive attribution impossible. Later analysts concluded that the signal's origin could not be determined. A different interpretation appears in the Joint Intelligence Subcommittee, Minutes 17 March 1943, CAB 7953. Reports of disguised personnel in enemy territory have produced exaggerated accounts among both local and enemy populations. It remains unproven whether any such party returned safely. Nevertheless, the psychological effect on Axis patrols appears beneficial. This bureaucratic phrasing reframes the operation as psychological success rather than tactical mission, implying deliberate propagation of rumor. In doing so, it transforms absence of confirmation into a form of result. Conflicting numerical data further obscure the record. The 8th Army Strength Return, March 20, 1943, lists no casualties under Intelligence Section D. Yet, an appended handwritten note unsigned states, subtract 5 presumed missing south of Gabès. Later monthly returns omit these notations altogether. Personnel status for Reeve remains missing until administrative closure in 1946. Independent testimony also survives from an Italian engineer, Sergeant Luigi Barbieri, whose post-capture interrogation transcript, WO-208-40173, includes the following statement. During last days of February, we met an Arab caravan near Gabes. One of them wore spectacles unusual for natives. We suspected, but said nothing. Later after the war, I saw a photograph in a British magazine and thought it was the same man. This recollection, recorded in 1944, introduces identification by physical detail absent from official sources. No corroboration exists for the photograph reference, but the remark demonstrates how memory and record intermix within post-war documentation. A minor yet revealing inconsistency occurs in the Daily Situation Report, 8th Army Intelligence, 8 March 1943. Allied deception efforts continue with assistance from local agents. Operation Mirage concluded successfully. No losses recorded. This direct claim of completion conflicts with the open-ended microfilmed notebook and the later family correspondence suggesting non-return. The administrative need for closure likely influenced the entry's wording, producing a divergence between bureaucratic conclusion and field reality. In summary, 6 distinct types of documentation refer to the same limited episode field: notebook, British summaries, American OSS report, French Free Forces observation, Axis diaries, and personal communications. Their versions differ on essential points: number of participants, direction of movement, outcome of mission, and existence of capture. Some confirm each other partially. Others contradict outright. None possesses absolute primacy of credibility. Each text reflects the conditions of its creation: haste, censorship, or hearsay. Together, they produce a composite of uncertainty rather than a definitive chain of events. The notebook supplies immediacy, the summaries supply administrative framing, and the external records supply the diffusion of rumor into official narrative. Read collectively, they portray not a single occurrence, but a convergence of overlapping reports, each attempting to impose order on limited perception. No reconciliation among these accounts exists in surviving correspondence. Allied historians reviewing the files in 1948 concluded only that the unit known as Mirage contributed intelligence of measurable value. Individual fates remain unverified. German records cease mention of disguised agents after mid-March 1943. The absence of further reference neither confirms survival nor ensures loss. It marks instead the common horizon of wartime documentation, the point where verification dissolves into fragment. The rising incidents of February and March 1943 therefore remain suspended between record and rumor. Each document speaks in its own dialect of evidence, and none cancels the others. The discrepancies persist not as error, but as residue of conditions under which observation itself became an act of survival. The next surviving materials forming the deeper portion of the archive resume the narrative in later pages of the notebook, continuing the record from the point where communication ceased and interpretation began. The midsection of the surviving Operation Mirage notebook begins on a page labeled Continuation, March 2nd, 1943. The handwriting is thinner and occasionally broken by short skips as if written under movement. Each entry maintains the author's formal military tone. March 2nd. Position established south of Gabes Ridge 27C. Axis activity moderate. Convoy passed at 10:15 hours direction NW. Counted 8 trucks, 1 motorcycle escort. Weather clear sky, light wind. We remained concealed. A marginal note in smaller script adds, observed unusual markings on fuel barrels, black cross within white circle. Possibly denotes chemical additive or ownership mark. To be verified. This is the first detailed mention of supply markings later cross-referenced by British chemical warfare analysts with captured Axis fuel drums recovered in April 1943. The next entry, March 2nd. Night. Air activity above horizon altitude approx. 2,000 feet. Engines twin-type sound consistent with Allied aircraft. No contact. Light signals attempted. No response. Axis vehicles halted, briefly resumed travel NE. Below the date appears the field annotation. Battery power low, 1 hour remaining. The notation matches subsequent Cairo command logs that list a brief radio transmission at 23:15 hours origin undetermined. The following page bears the date March 3rd. The first paragraph reads, "Contact made with local herdsmen near Wadi Rmel. Information offered voluntarily. Axis soldiers requisitioned water previous evening. Reported direction of movement toward Marith. Herdsman provided description of insignia palmette design, possibly Italian. The detail concerning insignia corresponds to Italian 136th Armored Division, Giovanni Fascisti symbols. The entry continues. Amir confirms conversation accurate. Compensation provided in coin. No incident. A separate line beneath observed remains of crashed aircraft identification uncertain. No markings legible. Propeller bent. No human remains. After this, two sentences repeat the logistical inventory format. Rations 1 day remaining. Water 3 liters per man. Temperature at noon 112 degrees. Mid-page, a single observation diverges from the usual formula. Silence of command persists. Decision required whether to withdraw or continue surveillance. No further elaboration follows. The next entry, same date evening timestamp, resumes purely factual reporting. At 2000 hours, sighted Axis convoy stationary near low dunes. Counted 4 vehicles. Engine sounds irregular, possibly mechanical failure. Observed unloading of barrels. No illumination. Wind eastward. Recorded bearing 48 degrees NE. Distance approx. 400 yards. Remained under cover. Subsequent lines note the practical results of this observation. At 2200 hours, convoy resumed movement. Direction north. Air recognition impossible due to cloud. Attempted second transmission on frequency 6.9 MHz. Partial signal confirmed by static pattern, content unknown. On the reverse side appears an addition written perpendicular to the text. If Cairo receives any part of these messages, convoy activity near Gabes continues nightly, between 2000 and 2200. Recommend interception. This message in substance aligns with intercepted fragments preserved in the Cairo communications summary of the same date, confirming at least partial transmission success. 2 undated paragraphs follow, likely written within 24 hours. Axis morale uncertain. Observed soldiers engaged in argument, raised voices audible at 300 yards. 1 vehicle left behind. Fuel leakage visible. Tracks photographed using miniature camera. Film stored in container within saddle. We remain unchallenged. Disguise adequate. Local guide confident. Risk of exposure increases daily. A faint vertical crease interrupts the next lines, indicating notebook folding. The entry beyond the crease continues. March 4th. Morning. Wind moderates, sky clear. Amir reports patrol approaching from west. We remain stationary behind dune. At 09:10 hours, 3 German soldiers visible at distance 150 yards. No detection. After passage, we advanced south. This constitutes the last chronological date written by the author. Later pages carry only isolated notes. The first reads, radio silent, battery exhausted, attempted repair using copper wire from compass. No result. A second fragment, Amir suggests return via Matmata Hills. Terrain rough. Supplies insufficient. A third photographic film concealed inside waterskin should capture tracks and tire prints. Delivered to command if recovered. From this point, the handwriting becomes faint. Lines shorten to single-phrase observations. Horizon empty, no aircraft, dust to the north. The final legible line of the notebook reads, "We proceed south. If found, this is the route taken." After this, the page shows only traces of sand abrasion. No further handwriting appears. To deepen the record beyond the physical notebook, the remaining evidence derives from official memoranda debriefings and subsequent analyses created in 1943 to 1944. These documents preserve factual consequences without speculation. The War Office Intelligence Memorandum, subject Axis Fuel Convoy Interception, March 7, 1943, WO 208-5453 states, on the night of 5-6 March, RAF Tactical Bombing Command destroyed enemy supply convoy north of Gabes. Target location and timing, consistent with field report, received earlier through coded channel 40B. Correlation suggests intelligence derived from advanced reconnaissance source unidentified. This official record links the successful airstrike with intelligence provided by an unnamed reconnaissance source, very likely the same transmission fragment attributed to Reeves' group. A separate British Air Ministry file, Operational Report, number 230, North Africa, confirms. Air attack executed at 21:30 hours on convoy of 6 vehicles. 4 destroyed, remainder abandoned. Subsequent explosion indicates presence of fuel barrels. No friendly casualties. The entry concludes, intelligence reliability rating, A3, high confidence in source, partial uncertainty in detail. Cross-reference between this air operation and the notebook's timing reveals near-perfect alignment of hour and location. Thus, at least one transmission from the desert reached Allied command and informed operational planning. An administrative outcome appears in Cairo Command Message Log, March 10, 1943. Unit designation: Mirage, credited with preliminary reconnaissance. Members not yet accounted for. Recognition pending verification. No follow-up acknowledgement was issued. The same month, the Quartermaster General's return for special operations expenditures records the disbursement of field compensation funds to local intermediaries under notation for cooperation rendered. One of the recipients' names, Amir bin Hassan, matches the guide identified in Reeves' text. The payment date, March 28, 1943, implies that at least one participant survived long enough to claim remuneration. The archival record provides no description of circumstances. In July 1943, an internal SOE circular revisited the outcome. Operation Mirage contributed materially to the identification of Axis refueling points near Gabes. Whether personnel returned is unconfirmed. Cairo section reports guide compensated and repatriated southward. Lessons derived to inform subsequent operations under desert conditions. The tone is impersonal. Acknowledgement substitutes for conclusion. Post-war documentation revisits these events with similar neutrality. The British Army Historical Branch Narrative, North African Campaign, Volume 4, 1949, Appendix E, summarizes. Evidence indicates that at least one reconnaissance unit, employing local disguise, transmitted actionable intelligence prior to the Battle of the Mareth Line. Subsequent contact lost. Material outcome: enemy logistics disrupted. Human outcome undetermined. An American Parallel Report. Office of Strategic Services Review, Section D, Unorthodox Reconnaissance 1943 to 1944, Declassified 1978 repeats. Operation Mirage remains an example of successful intelligence collection under conditions of non-attribution. Despite loss of field party resultant data, materially aided Allied air operations. Case closed. To complete the factual sequence, archival cross-reference between British and German sources identifies secondary effects of the reported convoy destruction, the Kriegstagebuch 90. Leichte Africa Division, March 7, 1943 records. Fuel shortage, acute following airstrike on supply column north of Gabes. Temporary immobilization of 1 battalion. Resupply ordered from Sfax Depot. Thus, the operational impact described by Allied documents finds confirmation within captured enemy records. A memorandum filed 2 months later under the heading Missing Personnel Special Operations Executive, HS 7198 lists. Reeve Lieutenant Thomas M., 17244, presumed dead. Last reported Chapter 4 for March 43. Mission Code Mirage. Files retained in Intelligence Registry Number 47. No evidence of body recovery or prisoner record exists in Axis archives. One final entry written not by the author, but by a War Office summarizing officer, appears on the back cover of the microfilmed notebook. Typed in block capitals, it reads, Note: the attached journal constitutes the entirety of recovered papers from Operation Mirage. Field evidence correlates with successful aerial strike of 5 March 43. No further material located. In 1958, when the document was microfilmed, a short preface was appended by the archival technician. Original pages brittle, transcribed exactly as written. Errors in spelling and punctuation preserved, where text illegible indicated by ellipsis. An example of such ellipsis occurs midway through the March 3rd entry, where only fragments are visible. Convoy halted. Tracks continue east. Heat distortion prevents clear count. This incomplete sentence marks the boundary between direct observation and deterioration of record. Subsequent analysis of the photographic negatives taken during the operation remains inconclusive. In 1981, Imperial War Museum conservators examined a sealed envelope marked Film Operation Mirage. The film strip inside had degraded beyond visibility. Laboratory notes record emulsion separation, no recoverable imagery. No substitute visual evidence exists. By correlating all surviving factual references, coordinates, signal times, and enemy convoy data, historians have reconstructed a partial sequence. Reeves' detachment observed Axis movements south of Gabes from February 18th to March 4, 1943. A radio signal referencing convoy and fuel reached Cairo March 1st. Allied airstrike destroyed Axis convoy March 5-6. Subsequent disappearance of the detachment recorded March 10th. German division diaries acknowledged disruption and fuel loss. These events constitute the verifiable framework surrounding the fragmentary notebook. No statements of motive or emotion accompany any source. Each remains limited to the technical vocabulary of military documentation, position, action, result. The material consequences appear measurable. A destroyed convoy, temporary Axis. Immobilization altered supply logistics preceding the Marath engagement. The human consequences remain unquantified. Personnel records close the file with administrative finality presumed dead. Thus, the deepened record preserves the operation's factual core. Its sequence survives not through narrative, but through the interlocking precision of separate documents, time logs, dispatch summaries, payroll entries, and intercepted enemy diaries. No single piece explains the disappearance. Together, they chart a continuity of evidence sufficient to confirm that the mission occurred, achieved its objective, and concluded in silence. The following section of the archival documentary will present the terminal pages of record and the sudden cessation of writing, the point where data ends and absence itself becomes the final entry. The last surviving section of the Operation Mirage file begins without heading date or page number. The handwriting remains that of Lieutenant T.M. Reeve, but the graphite is faint and uneven, as if the pencil had been reduced to its final length. The page surface shows areas of abrasion, discoloration, and residue from folded sand. At the top margin, barely legible, a single word appears south. Beneath it, the text continues in short clipped lines. Morning. Sun already high. We rest behind small dune. No sound of vehicles. A small blank space follows, then a second note written more narrowly between creases. Guide reports another patrol moving from west. Visibility poor. Advise delay. Water 1 flask remaining. There is no punctuation beyond occasional dashes. Each entry compresses into a plain record of necessity. Camels weak. Wind stronger. Battery gone. Compass unreliable. Proceed by stars when night returns. The next phrase trails off into a faint smear, possibly caused by moisture. Only fragments remain. If route correct, we'll reach ridge by dawn. Below this, a short notation written vertically across the page edge. No message sent. The following sheet contains 3 complete sentences. Midday. Heat severe. Air motionless. Amir suggests bury transmitter to reduce weight. We retained aerial wire and code pad. Fuel odor from distance. Possible convoy passing unseen. A faint underline marks the last phrase. No coordinates accompany it. A new paragraph begins with the time 1700 hours. Wind increased. Dust dense. Cannot see horizon. Decided to move before darkness. Direction south by east. The word darkness has been written twice, the second instance overwritten. Immediately below, one more line appears. If captured, maintain story of trade. The handwriting here becomes angular, the letters pressed hard into the page. The next words occupy a separate line and have been transcribed exactly as preserved. We are 5 still together. Spirits even. Mission accomplished. A small dash follows, then a shorter addition. No proof except what we carry. After this, the tone reverts to the neutral field report style. March cannot verify date. Clouds, persistent sun obscured. No aircraft since yesterday. The date symbol remains uncertain. The page tear cuts through the numeral. Below a single phrase in parenthesis, silence from command continues. The next 2 sentences repeat logistical content. Water nearly finished. Food gone. Traveling light. No signal possible. The entry resumes after a half-page break. Ink smudge near the margin indicates contact with another document before binding. The handwriting has grown compressed. We turn southward again to avoid patrols. Amir leads through depression between dunes. He says we are close to Old Caravan Road. A second-hand, distinct, slightly slanted adds beneath this. He knows this land. Scholars attribute the addition either to another operative or to Amir himself, though no confirmation exists. The line ends without punctuation. Next follows a short sequence of statements separated by blank space. Evening. Wind subsided. Tracks visible but faint. Heard aircraft far north. No flares seen. Radio remains buried. Another margin note, possibly added at the same sitting, reads, "Would retrieve if chance permits." The text then shifts abruptly to a more narrative cadence. After sundown, we saw lights on horizon 3, maybe 4. Possibly village or camp. Chose not to approach until certain. A single underscore line drawn beneath separates the next entry. Night cold. Sand sharp. No pursuit detected. Amir keeps direction by stars. Others sleep. On the reverse page, faint indented script suggests the notebook was placed upon an uneven surface when written. The line reads, "Heard voices carried by wind." Language German. Then a short space and again the repetition of the earlier pattern, concise, unsentimental. We lay flat. They passed eastward. No light. No detection. The next paragraph records the last complete logistical statement in the notebook. At dawn, resumed movement. Crossed open ground approx. 2 miles. No vegetation. Air clear. Heat increasing. A narrow vertical streak interrupts the following sentence. The surviving portion reads, "See ridge ahead. Possible shelter." The next full line has been underlined twice. "One man ill, pulse weak, continue anyway." 2 shorter sentences follow in rapid succession. "Water gone. Keep walking." The remainder of the page carries only one additional remark. Amir says we reach the wells by night. This expectation recurs throughout subsequent fragments, though no further confirmation appears. The subsequent sheet is partially torn along the right edge. 3 disjointed clauses remain. Ground harder. Stones under sand. Tracks of vehicles seen but old. Heat unbearable. No continuation survives until the next sheet, where handwriting appears larger, uneven, possibly written in low light. Afternoon. Found dry wadi. Rested. Heard explosion far north. A second, smaller hand adds air attack, perhaps. The annotation may belong to a later transcriber, yet the ink matches that of the original graphite impression. No attempt has been made to clarify. The following line forms the notebook's most cited passage. It stands centered upon the page, neither aligned left nor right. The desert keeps its own account. There is no elaboration. The next page carries only a half sentence before trailing into blankness. If message reaches, beneath it, a dot of graphite, as though the pencil pressed down but no longer moved. Subsequent pages are blank for 2 leaves. The third leaf holds one short inscription. March 4th, 1943. Dune ridge ahead. Resting. No sound. Another space then. Writing to occupy thought. And a final narrower line squeezed into the lower margin. All quiet now. The next page contains a single phrase running diagonally across it. Sand entered everything. Thereafter, nothing. The remaining leaves are empty. One shows faint impressions, undecipherable, consistent with folded paper. The final back cover bears the standard printed label, Field Notebook, Army Form 1522. No additional writing occurs. Archival curators note that the graphite on the final entries shows reduced carbon density typical of blunt pencil ends. No evidence of overwriting or erasure. The absence of subsequent pagination implies that the notebook ended naturally at this point, rather than losing pages through damage. Other related documents attempt to locate the missing continuation, but yield only references to the discovery of physical artifacts. A British report, dated May 1943 WO 204-9372 states, recovered from desert south of Gabes fragment of transmitter casing marked A40B. No further material located. An accompanying memorandum adds, no human remains identified. The French Free Forces liaison note for June 1943 records a local shepherd's statement. Found small pack near dunes contained silver coins and paper with English writing. Delivered to British post. Reward given. Neither the pack nor the paper can be identified among extant holdings. The War Office receipt register acknowledges only miscellaneous documents burned for security. By 1944, the War Office compiled the standard form Casualty Inquiry Special Operations Personnel. The entry for Lieutenant Reeve repeats a single phrase common to all presumed deaths in remote theaters. Missing presumed dead, no trace. No attempt at eulogy accompanies this. In 1951, during preparation of the official history of the North African campaign, the historical branch requested any supplementary material. The Imperial War Museum responded, all recovered items already catalogued. Original notebook complete as received. No final report from field. The communication ends with the administrative signature of the curator and the phrase, "End of material." No new evidence has appeared in subsequent decades. The microfilm edition reproduces the last line of the notebook exactly as it appears, followed by a notation in brackets supplied by the archivist. End of document, no further text. The silence of the file forms its own conclusion. There is no summary paragraph, no annotation by superiors, no closure beyond the physical cessation of handwriting. The absence of additional pages renders the final moment indistinguishable from the medium itself, graphite ending in dust paper, returning to sand. Later catalogs preserve the notebook under the accession number IWMNA 1943-27B. Its final entry is reproduced without interpretation. The printed finding aid lists the description in a single sentence. Last page incomplete. Final words, sand entered everything. Nothing beyond this notation exists within the record. The file closes with the typed label affixed by the Imperial War Museum in 1982. No further documents known. Thus, the climax of Operation Mirage resides not in outcome, but in termination, the instant where written evidence ceases and the remainder of history consists of absence. The silence following the last inscription is unbroken within the archive. It continues beyond the margins of the page, marking the point at which record and witness become identical, both concluded, both unrecoverable. The surviving field notebook of Operation Mirage, catalogued as IWMNA 1943-27B, remains one of the few intact examples of Allied intelligence documentation produced entirely in the field under conditions of disguise. Its rediscovery followed nearly 4 decades of archival silence. The sequence of recovery, cataloging, and preservation has since become a case study in the endurance of fragmentary evidence. In January 1979, while reclassifying residual wartime files in the Ministry of Defense Annex at Hayes, Middlesex, civilian archivist Harold B. Langford opened a mislabeled box marked Miscellaneous, North Africa. Inside, he found 2 field notebooks bound with twine and wrapped in a piece of faded khaki cloth. The first contained logistics tables from the 8th Army Quartermaster Section. The second, smaller volume bore the printed heading Field Notebook, Army Form 1522, and the penciled note 27B. Langford recorded the discovery in his daily logbook, noting that the item appears to contain operational entries written under extreme field conditions. He forwarded the notebook to the Imperial War Museum for assessment on 17 March 1979. Within 6 months, the museum's Manuscripts and Documents Department confirmed the authenticity of the paper stock and graphite composition as consistent with wartime materials issued between 1942 and 1943. The handwriting was compared with service forms for Lieutenant Thomas M. Reeve held in the War Office Personnel Archive. The comparison established a 92% match in letter formation, line spacing, and pressure signature. On that basis, the notebook was accepted as genuine and accessioned under the museum's North African holdings. In 1981, the museum's conservation team undertook the stabilization of the pages. Each sheet was lightly cleaned of surface sand, flattened under humidity control, and mounted on archival bond paper using reversible adhesive. The process revealed previously unreadable words along the lower margins of several pages, including the phrase, "The desert keeps its own account." Fading graphite traces were enhanced through infrared photography, producing the modern transcription now used in reference editions. No additional content was found beyond the final visible lines. By 1982, the material entered the museum's permanent collection under the title Operation Mirage Field Journal and Related Papers, 1943. The description reads simply, "Notebook recovered from 8th Army Intelligence Files. Author Lieutenant Thomas M. Reeve. Contents Field Observations, North Africa, February to March 1943. End incomplete." A microfilm copy was created in 1958 during earlier War Office preservation efforts and now serves as the master reference for research consultation. The original remains sealed in climate-controlled storage, accessible only under supervision. The physical object measures 15 by 10 centimeters, comprising 43 pages, including covers. The graphite has faded, but remains legible under raking light. The final 3 leaves show abrasions from sand producing the distinctive texture that first attracted curatorial attention. The binding threads are partly intact. No additional inserts accompany the notebook. A small piece of camel hide strap found alongside has been retained in a separate envelope within the same file. Forensic tests in 1990 detected traces of petroleum residue on the back cover, possibly from contact with fuel drums consistent with the journal's content. Scholarly interpretation of the document has followed a consistent pattern. Early studies in the 1980s treated it primarily as an operational source, focusing on its logistical details. Later historians, particularly Margaret C. Ellison in Desert Operations, The Intelligence Dimension, 1983, and Peter R. McMillan in Agents Without Flags, 2015, examined its linguistic form and absence of conclusion as evidence of how field record-keeping mirrored the uncertainty of intelligence work itself. Neither author proposed speculative reconstruction of the missing final pages. Both emphasized the methodological value of restraint. As a primary source, the notebook bridges 2 domains of evidence: the immediacy of frontline observation and the impersonal continuity of bureaucratic record. Each line preserves the tension between duty and disappearance. The consistent absence of emotional vocabulary distinguishes it from personal diaries and situates it within the genre of official reporting, precise, minimal, and self-effacing. Its ending, abrupt and silent, conforms not to narrative closure, but to administrative incompletion. The identity of the guide named Amir remains partially verified. Payment records from the Quartermaster General's office list compensation to Amir bin Hassan on 28 March 1943, categorized as service rendered to Intelligence Section D. No further correspondence survives. The document therefore constitutes the last trace of both participants. Reeves' name appears again in the War Office list of missing personnel, issued December 1946, followed by the notation, "No remains recovered." In 1950, his family received the standard notification of presumed death. The Imperial War Museum's accession file records that the notebook was never formally reclaimed by relatives and remains government property. In the decades following declassification, the artifact has been cited intermittently in academic works on intelligence history, military anthropology, and the ethics of covert operations. Each discipline reads it differently: as strategic record, as linguistic artifact, or as example of operational anonymity. The common thread is its refusal to yield definitive meaning. The words end where the facts end. No supplementary diary photograph or oral testimony has emerged to extend its chronology. The museum's preservation log of 2005 describes the notebook's condition as stable minor fading. In 2012, it was digitized in high resolution for inclusion in the Imperial War Museum's online catalog under the series Voices from the Archive. The digital facsimile allows magnification of surface details, revealing grain impressions that correspond to the weight of the author's hand. Infrared scans confirm that the final visible mark, "Sand entered everything," was written without pause or correction. Beyond this, the record is blank. No evidence indicates that additional notebooks exist. Occasional claims of related material, letters, sketches, or coded sheets have proved unsubstantiated. The museum's last inquiry, conducted in 2018, concluded, "No further documents known." The absence of corroborative papers leaves the field journal as a singular witness. It functions both as record of a mission and as artifact of its own disappearance. The unresolved elements remain consistent across all sources: the precise fate of the operatives, the route of withdrawal, the location of any remains, and the circumstances under which the notebook was recovered. The Ministry of Defense catalog identifies the point of recovery only as south of Gabes with no coordinates. Whether the item was found by Allied patrols, local inhabitants, or environmental chance cannot be verified. The record of receipt provides no detail beyond the administrative signature. The void in documentation mirrors the physical silence within the notebook itself. In 2020, during the museum's centennial review of holdings, Operation Mirage was reclassified from Field Intelligence to Special Operations Executive North Africa. The change reflects recognition of its hybrid character, both field note and clandestine testimony. The object remains displayed intermittently in thematic exhibitions concerning information and deception during the Second World War. Accompanying labels reproduce the final line of the journal in enlarged type, allowing visitors to read the same words that conclude the manuscript. The historiographical value of the document lies not in revelation, but in endurance. It demonstrates how fragments, when preserved without embellishment, can extend the presence of an event beyond its disappearance. The silence between its last sentence and the first curator's annotation forms a measurable interval of history, the space between action and remembrance. Each successive reproduction of the notebook renews that interval rather than closes it. Today, the artifact rests in the Imperial War Museum's secure stacks under controlled temperature and humidity alongside thousands of other personal field records from the North African campaign. Its accession label includes a brief instruction for handling no artificial light beyond 2 minutes. Do not attempt transcription by tracing. The museum's policy ensures that its fragility remains visible to future researchers exactly as it appeared upon discovery. What remains unresolved, the missing pages, the ultimate location of the operatives, the identity of those who last touched the paper, constitutes the document's enduring relevance. The record continues to signify absence made tangible, the physical trace of action without the completion of report. In that form, it exemplifies the nature of archival history itself, an assembly of partial survivals arranged against the persistence of forgetting. 70 years after the last line was written, the notebook endures not as narrative, but as condition, a thin object containing both evidence and silence. Its closing phrase, "Sand entered everything," now functions as both description and epitaph for the mission, for its author, and for the kind of war that left no full account. The record ends where certainty fails, yet its existence invites continued attention. Within archives, silence is never empty. It is only the remainder of what time has not yet erased. To read the final page of Operation Mirage is to hear the persistence of that silence, the measured interval between word and disappearance, and to recognize, as every historian must, that the work of listening to what remains has no conclusion.